That night, while we were very deep in our sleep, we were captured. We were marched down to the barracoons. We had no clue where we were going. We saw things that no one in their life should ever see.
Eyes on the heartbeat of the land, bound by stories in grain and sand. Our voices join the ancient song. Together we stand forever strong. The rhythm lingers in our bones, a testament to those who came before. The story continues beyond the horizon.
Welcome to a Clotilda site tour. My name is Joyce Davis. I am a direct descendant of Charlie and Maggie Lewis. Both of my ancestors were born in Clotilda. And as Jackie started out the tour, there are several layers to the story. Started from the 1800s with Timothy Mayer getting word that there were a brisk of enslaved Africans being sold by King Lele in the Kingdom of Dahomey. Clotilda was built in 1855, and she stated it was built for speed. Now, you know that Timothy Mayer did not take this journey. He hired Captain Foster, best sea captain in Mobile. So when you go to Cape Coast, when you go to the enslaved council, you will go into the place where the men were held and where the women were held, right? And then you guys shaking your head, so it tells me that you visited Ghana, you visited the last bath. So there were several things that they had to do after being their villages being raided, and one of the things was the last bath, where they had to go and take a bath in the river, and they had shea butter put it on them so they could be presentable. Okay, and the ages range from 2 to 25. They needed people that could work in the fields and to reproduce. Now the thing here, I'm going to go back and forth from Alabama to the continent, because the state of Alabama was the highest grower of cotton. Cotton was killing. So that was one of the driving force for these young men, because they wanted to become millionaires. And they needed free labor, because cotton was steadily growing, and they needed more people to work in the fields. When Foster arrived, and as a kid, I just thought this man went over to the Kingdom of the Home and brought back these individuals. Again, we talked about King Lele and his part in it. But even before going ashore, King Lele then met Captain Foster, because there were so many ships, starting from 1619 to 1860. This was his first time going to the continent of Africa. So again, Timothy Mayer was back here bragging, and I don't like to call it a bet. It was a well thought out plan, because Timothy Mayer knew that it was a possibility that he would be tried. But he had a tugboat. I'm going to give you the name of one of his tugboats. Was a Billy Jones. William Jones was one of the judges who presided over the case. And his alibi, she talked about the alibi. He had an alibi that he would sit on the Roger B. Taney. And if any educators here that are familiar with the Dred Scott decision, yes. Right? So Roger B. Taney was the judge who presided over that case. Timothy Mayer was just fascinated about that case, so he decided to name one of his tugboats after Roger B. Taney. So that was an alibi. And then also, he had to notify his brother to bring over another boat that was called a Cesar, where the enslaved would have to disembark onto. And again, there were other co-conspirators, because there were 110, only 32 resided in Africa Town. Others were shipped to other places, Dallas County, Washington County, Selma area. The 2-year-old who was born in Clotilda, and I think you guys went to the Heritage House Museum today, she was shipped to Selma, Alabama. She was the oldest enslaved. She died in 1940. For a long time we thought it was Cudgel Lewis, but it was actually Matilda Crick who was shipped to Selma. And on the way back, on the journey back, they took the sails down so they would not be recognized, and they took the long way back. So they wouldn't be caught. My ancestor was enslaved by a Confederate soldier by the name of Colonel Thomas Buford. So my family is, at one point, it was 2 miles outside of the Africatown historic area, and now it's 5 miles due to the highway and different things that have came about. So we're actually 5 miles outside of the historic area. Colonel Thomas Buford enslaved 8 of those enslaved Africans. 2 of them were my ancestors, and some of them were American born. There were some people here when the survivors of the Clotilda arrived, but the unique thing about the Clotilda survivors that they demanded things. They did not come here with a slavery mentality. They were not afraid. So they were enslaved for 5 years. Of course, you know about the Emancipation Proclamation that was signed, and we didn't know until 2 years later. It was 1863, but we didn't find out until 2 years later. In 1869, there was an auction for 7 acres of land. Colonel Thomas Buford had passed away, and my ancestors, along with those others, saved $200 to purchase that land. That land has been there since 1870. Then it's 155 years. We just celebrated April 5th. I had a historic marker placed in Lewis Quarters. This is the first historical marker placed in that area. I'm working on putting it on the National Register. It's not on the National Register, but it's on the Alabama Register. After being enslaved for 5 years, my ancestors were the first collective group, because nobody did anything on their own. The first collective group to purchase land in 1870, but then 1872, the other enslaved started purchasing land. Now, Cudjoe Lewis asked Timothy Mayer, could he buy land? And he, abruptly told him, no, why would I give you property on top of property? No, I would not sell you any land. Not taking no for an answer, they started to purchase land in other places. A lot of the enslaved worked for Timothy Mayer. They had a lumber mill. My ancestor worked for a local historian by the name of Emma Langdon Roach, who wrote Historic Sketches of the South. That was the first book written about the enslaved Africans. I know a lot of people heard about Zora Neale Hurston's book, Barracoon, but there was someone before Zora Neale Hurston. There is some controversy about Barracoon, that there was some plagiarism within those books that she plagiarized some of Emma Langdon Roach's work. They would dance on Sunday, and that was something that they did in their homeland. And there was a free person named Free George who asked them about church. And they was like, well, what is church? And he introduced them to a church in Stone Street, downtown Mobile. And people made fun of them at Stone Street. They made fun of how they wear their clothing and how they talk. So they established Union Missionary Baptist Church, which was first called the Old Landmark Baptist Church. I attend Union Missionary Baptist Church. There was a school. There was a Rosenwald school, if you're familiar with any Rosenwald schools. Julius Rosenwald, who was instrumental in the Seals and Roebuck. Julius Rosenwald was a philanthropist. He was friends with Booker T. Washington. And they planted schools all over the South, the Rosenwald School. I know a lot of you seen the film Descendants, but there is another piece. It's called, it is 60 Minutes Africatown, where we sit down with Anderson Cooper and 2 of the family members from the Mayer family. But it's on YouTube. It's 22 minutes long. But it's worth watching.
Even though they tried to hide it, and even though they said it was not true, they said that this story is a myth, there is evidence north, and it's in the front yard of the perpetrator. There is a fish camp that is owned by the Mayer family, and that is where the Clotilda lies. 16 feet beneath the water of this Mobile River. We normally have a ceremony, but because we're not there at the sacred place, we won't. But we will hear from an ancestor, Miss Maggie Lewis.
My name is Maggie Lewis. There are no pictures of me found in the history books. I remain faceless. But I do want to tell you my story because it did happen. The year that I'm going to start with is 1860 because that was the most traumatic day or year that I can remember, Steve. Like a thief in the night, we were captured by the Dahomey warriors. Like a thief in the night, I said. Very quiet, very still, but very accurate of what they came to do to us. See, that night, while we were very deep in our sleep, we were captured. We were marched down to the barracoons. We had no clue where we were going. We saw things that no one in their life should ever see. We knew that we would never get back to our homes. We knew that we would never see some of our family because that night we watched the majority of them, not most, be killed, slaughtered, beheaded. Well, how long did we go to the barracoons? We walked days, starving, crying, miserable. We get to the barracoons. We're along with a lot of others, different tribes. We don't speak the same language. We don't even recognize some. But I recognized the person that was by my side. His name was outlawed. Outlawed, let me just tell you about him for a minute. We were a couple before we were captured, so I was familiar with who I was by. Well, we traveled. They put us on that ship, Clotilda. We traveled months. We traveled through hurricanes, almost 70 days, in each other's stench and filth. They would only let us up for a little while to get some sun, to give us just a little bit of something to keep us alive to get here. We got somewhere down yonder, and they let us off of that boat finally. Well, they divided us up, but just luckily, I was still able to keep my shipmate, outlawed, by my side. They got us off that ship, and they sold us to Thomas Colonel Buford. You may say, well, how were you all so lucky? God. That kept us together. When we got there to Colonel Buford land, he told us what he wanted us to do, and we did just that. Charlie was a chief back in the continent, and he knew a lot. So he was a very well-skilled man. He knew about land. I knew about land. 1865, our freedom came. We worked as slaves for 5 years. Could you imagine being taken from your land, working 5 long years in an unknown land? When they got us off of that ship, they renamed most of us. When outlawed said his name, the man documenting his name told him he's gonna call him Charlie. Charlie Lewis. Does that sound like outlawed to you?
Not even close.
Well, since they were renaming everybody and they couldn't spell the names that we were pronouncing from the continent, I told them my name was America. I bet you those white boys could spell that. And they did. 1865, our freedom. We were let loose. We couldn't go anywhere. We didn't want no parts of Mobile. We wanted to go back to Africa. We wanted to go back from where we were stolen from. 1865 came, we had to work still. Timothy Mayer told Cujo Lewis, Charlie Lewis, Gooper, all of them. He told them, I'm not taking you back to Africa. So we had to work. I worked in the market. I was a cultivator. I sold bill peas and okra at the market. Charlie was a grave digger, and he basically worked for Timothy Mayer and Colonel Buford until we decided in 1870 that we would purchase our own land for $200 for 7 acres of land. Would you like to buy some of my field peas and okra, ma'am? Thank you. We got our 7 acres of land for $200 along with some others. They told us our last name was Lewis. So okay, our last name is Lewis. So we're gonna purchase this land and we're gonna call it ours. Lewis Quarters. It sits that way. It's still there. After 155 years, it's still there. Well, we got our land and we had us a family. We had 5 children: Martha, Maggie, Richard, Joseph. Now, my family goes all the way up 7 generations of educators, college graduates with degrees, homeowners and landowners as well, just like me and Charlie was. Excuse me, Alula, because that's who I will always know him as. Just always remember, you could never kill the spirit of an ancestor.
All right.
Soon our will be done with the troubles of this world. I'm going home to live with God. No more weeping and wailing. No more weeping and wailing. No more weeping and wailing. Going home to live with God.
All right. As you got it, we just finishing up the tour. Unfortunately, we wasn't able to go to the actual final resting place of the Clotilda due to the inclement weather, so we wasn't able to go there. But all in all, man, it was a very good, very good tour. That sister who was singing, she did her thing. She did her thing. What y'all think about that? That sister there took it all the way back. She took it back to the church. Took it all the way back to those fields, man. This was a very powerful tour. Even though we weren't able to get to the actual, site to where they burned Clotilda and sunk her for the world to not find out and discover. See, God always got another plan. God always has another plan. Our history needs to be celebrated and shared. Not covered, not hidden, not erased. This your man G. Lewis. To my next video. Take care of yourself. Always fam. Take care of your people. God bless. I'm out.